Hi Aquarius, welcome to 2017. This is Astrologykiki and we're going to review your January forecast. Really the month starts out in a very positive way, a very productive way. There are aspects and planets that are going to encourage you to take advantage of action and to be productive. If you are productive and you make an effort and you take action on things, you will reap the rewards of some of the good stuff that's going on in your forecast. So at the beginning of the month, really the first week, there's a very strong focus on your 11th house, your 12th house, and your second house. And kind of an interesting mix. The 11th house is a house of acquaintances, networking, meeting with associations and associates, and it's a very outward facing house where you're involved. And the 12th house is quite different. It's a very sort of introspective house where you are kind of regrouping and reviewing your prior year and trying to get a grasp on what has happened in the previous year so that you can move forward in your first house and initiate your goals and your dreams based on where you've been. So you have your focus is both on a very outward facing and a very sort of inward facing and introspective house for this month. As well as your second house, which is the house of earned income and possessions. So maybe you're finding that your income is really generated through some of the networking that you've been doing, some of the associations, committees that you've been meeting. You've been really benefiting from some of these connections that you have, these acquaintances that are in your life. And that is the focus at this time. Being involved and maybe that's part of your planning. Part of your 12th house planning for the following year is how have I worked with these kind of networking scenarios, and how can I move forward and use that in my benefit and to be more productive in the following year when you do hit your first house focus. So this is the time. This is the time to really work with those connections that you have, to reach out to people, to get out and network more. And you will probably see that if you make that effort and if you put that work into it, you will probably see that come into your bank account, and your earned income will be positively affected. Towards the second half of the month, we're looking at some mixed aspects in there. There's some positive as well as some challenging issues that you could have. And the focus has not changed very much. We're still looking at your 11th and 12th house of the networking and the summarizing, the recapitulating focus, but we're moving into, instead of maybe having the focus be so much on money, moving into more of third house, which is marketing, writing, advertising, travel, some short distance travel, communicating, siblings, neighbors, community. So that again is a very outward facing house for you. So your focus will shift a little bit from the money to really more of a communication. How can you get your word out type of focus. The only thing, the challenges are going to come in some of the bigger planets towards the end of the month. So we're looking at planets like Uranus, which is a planet of surprises. It's a little unstable. And we're looking at Neptune, which is a planet of rose-colored glasses. You think everything looks rosy, but you may not have the full picture. And the reality is that it's maybe not as smooth sailing as you thought it was going to be. And then you're also looking at the planet of Saturn, which is a planet of restriction and a planet that likes to teach you lessons. It's not always the funnest planet, but it wants you to be responsible. And so, kind of a very interesting mix that you have towards the end. I'm not sure what surprises could come up with regards to your networking and your marketing and your advertising and getting out there and meeting with people. But I think the lesson learned with Saturn is usually to be careful, be conservative in your actions and your words, particularly if you're taking on some kind of writing aspect, which is a big third house thing. Don't just willy-nilly say what. Be thoughtful and think about what you're saying or doing before you do it, and you should be able to overcome whatever obstacle comes your way. And there may be a surprise in there with Uranus in the mix, and things may not be as you thought they were going to be. So just be aware. Going into it, just be aware that something could come up. Maybe you thought things were one way and they weren't. They were totally different. But as long as you're pretty conservative and responsible with your actions and your words, you should be fine. Towards the middle of the month, there's a full moon in the 5th house. The full moon signifies endings, and the 5th house is a very fun house. So hopefully that's not all ending for you, but it's the house of children and romance and sports and having fun with your friends and being out and about and being creative. And so maybe there's something along those lines that's not necessarily like some tragic ending to anything, but just maybe you're moving into a different stage. So if you were just sort of flippantly dating someone, maybe now you're going to get serious and move into that stage of things. Or maybe your sports season has ended and you're going to start something new. Maybe your child is going away to school, going away, boarding school, college on the mainland, something of that sort, where it's sort of a new stage for the both of you. One thing is coming to the end, and another thing is changing and or moving forward in a different direction. Towards the end of the month, there is a new moon, which usually signifies beginnings, and this one will be in your 12th house. Kind of an interesting house to have your new moon. It's closely tied to Pluto this month, and Pluto is the planet of rebirth. It's like the phoenix falling to ashes and then rejuvenating from the ground. It's and the 12th house, that was Pluto is the Phoenix. And so it's a time to start anew. And the 12th house is an interesting house. It's a house of many different areas, which all can tie into each other. But it's a house of institutions, whether it be hospitals or government or universities, jails, things like that, as well as secrets, things that aren't really out in the open. Like I said before, it's a very sort of introverted area. This is things could be happening behind the scenes. And to be honest with you, that kind of ties in with some of those other planets that are involved at the end of the month, that are, Neptune, where you think something is one thing, but it's not, and surprises where you didn't anticipate some issues coming up. So something in your 12th house could be a stir. There's something going on that either you're keeping a secret from someone, or someone's keeping a secret from you. And maybe it's time for that to come out in the open. And you are, or maybe, actually with new moon, it's probably more likely that you're starting something that's a secret, or just be wise, make good choices, and you should be fine. But again, take advantage of the very productive aspects and planets that will be facing you this month. And welcome to 2017.